All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started then. I've got my timer going here. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the lessons that our company learned by going through a crowdfunding campaign, and the feedback that we got that led us to create a hardware as a service business model as opposed to a business model where we're just selling devices to customers. That was the talk, that I submitted for this, but really this is going to be about, when do you make that decision to pivot your hardware startup? How do you know when it's time to go after a slightly different market than what you had originally intended on doing? A brief caveat about the talk that I'm about to give is that everything is based on a true story. So this isn't a prescriptive method for how to have, the perfect crowdfunding campaign or how to run your company. I'm just hoping that some of the mistakes and the lessons that we've learned will be able to translate into the things that other people are doing in this space. This whole, situation that I'm in right now with my company came about in the fall of 2011 when I moved to Illinois to attend the University of Illinois for graduate school. As I was leaving, my wife and I got a basil plant as a going-away present from her parents, and we set that up in our kitchen, and we were excited about growing some basil and using it in some of the recipes we enjoyed cooking. But we quickly got frustrated because we were killing that plant. And so what we wanted to do was figure out what we were doing wrong and how we could solve that problem. And we found out that we were incorrectly watering it. And so I grabbed an Arduino, I connected it to a soil moisture sensor, and I had that send information to my cell phone, every time the dryness dropped below a certain level in that soil. And from there, that was some useful information, and it solved my problem, and it helped me keep my plant alive. But it also made me think about all the other people in the world that had that same problem. And how could we use, this technology to create something that would be bigger, that would have a more global impact. And from experiences that I had had in the past working in some emerging economies, I knew that global water stress was a major problem, and that there are millions, if not billions, of people that were living in areas where water resources were being severely constrained. And they wanted to find ways that we could use technology and the Internet of Things specifically to solve these problems. And I also knew that global agriculture was a huge industry. It's multi-trillion dollars worldwide. There's millions of people and hundreds of millions of acres of farmland in the United States alone, and that market is even larger internationally. So if you have agriculture, you have water resources, and there's some way that you can tie these things together, using the internet. And then also the other great thing that was happening was that global GSM coverage was starting to become ubiquitous to the point that you could just assume that internet connectivity, even if it's just low-speed bandwidth, would be available pretty much anywhere. So with all these trends coming together, I thought that building an internet-connected device that told you about soil moisture would be really helpful for agriculture. So I grabbed some friends, I talked to them about my prototype, I talked to them about these different trends that were happening out there in the world, and we decided we wanted to start a hardware company to build a device that would solve this problem and enable farmers to have better tools for building these devices. But we had a really big conundrum because we weren't sure how we would get to that point. We were 5 guys in a lab at Illinois doing some stuff in our spare time that wasn't related to our primary research. We really didn't know how to go about the process of building this huge product for this massive market. And around that same time, I started reading about the way that Elon Musk and Tesla had decided to go after the electric car market. It's another huge industry with a lot of people that are driving cars all over the place. And they wanted to find a way that they could, launch a product into an innovative segment of the population, and then scale that up, and then go to wide adoption. And the way they did that was by going through a sports car. Then they have their luxury car, the Model S, and now they're developing, I think the Model E is what it's called, for mass consumers. And so we tried to draw some parallels to the same strategy for the world of soil moisture sensors. And the strategy we came up with was that we would try to launch something to gardeners. These would be people that would be willing to try out some new technology. And if it failed, it wouldn't be the end of the world. They'd have healthier plants, but maybe if the device went down, it wouldn't affect their revenue streams. And then the people who maybe were analogous to the luxury market, we thought maybe that would be like landscaping companies. They would be able to use this device for their businesses. But then again, it also is not a mission-critical type of device. Their crews could still go out and water. And then farming and agriculture would be that final market where we'd launch to a wide number of people that really depend on this product for an activity that they're very involved in. So with that strategy in mind, we decided to launch a consumer gardening product. And we built this thing called PlantLink. And PlantLink was really simple. It was close to a minimum viable product as we could get. It was just an indoor-outdoor sensor that wirelessly connected to the internet. It had some moisture sensing, and we made it really easy to set up. And through the design process and talking to friends, we came up with this device. But then we wanted to decide, how would we launch this thing? How would we get the feedback we needed to make sure that we weren't going to sink lots of money and time into something that no one wanted? So we thought about building versus selling first, and there have been a lot of discussions about crowdfunding and about the merits of doing sales before building. So I won't go into too many of these points in detail, but at the end we decided that the validated learning and the guaranteed revenue that would come from doing a pre-sales campaign were worth the extra time and effort that we'd have to do up front in order to get that to happen. So as we were looking at different pre-sales channels, we decided to go with a Kickstarter campaign. I think a lot of the lessons that I'm going to be talking about that we learned could have happened through Indiegogo or Self-Starter, or a lot of the platforms that have become to take shape recently. But at the time when we were going to do this, Kickstarter was really the way to go back then. And it really beat out the other options of trying to get a contract with a big box retailer or any kind of direct online sales, or a lot of the other methods that you might have to sell items more traditionally. So from our pre-sale campaign, we were successful. We tried to raise $75,000. We ended up raising $96,000. And that was really great. It kind of validated the things that we wanted to do with the product. But more importantly, it got us in touch with a wide variety of people. So not only did we have some great conversations with consumer gardeners, we also got to talk to people from John Deere and Bosch and Scott's Miracle-Gro and all these major companies that were heavily involved in the space that we wanted to get into. Whether they were in the landscaping business or in commercial agriculture and consumer gardening, we were able to talk to people across the whole gamut of the industry that we were thinking about disrupting. And it's important to point out, too, that we didn't talk about the commercial applications of the product in the Kickstarter campaign. We just talked about the consumer applications. But still, that was enough of a signaling mechanism to people in that industry that they were able to see the value in our product and start to talk to us about where the technology could go in the future. So that was really great for us. We got some good press coverage, and we had a chance to talk to people across these different industries. And the stories that started to emerge from those conversations really helped us refocus where we wanted to go as a company. So we talked to landscaping companies quite a bit. They were one of the largest groups of people outside of consumer gardeners that reached out to us during our campaign. And we learned some really key things. We learned that landscaping companies are very limited by manpower. So they have these commercial crews that go out, they drive around the city, they check on commercial property or a residence or a municipal facility, and they check to see if those plants are healthy. And if the plants are in good shape, they don't do anything, and if they need attention, then they water them. But it's a lot of fuel costs, it's a lot of labor costs, and they're very limited by these things. So they were interested in some kind of device that would reduce the need for manpower so they could have a wider area of coverage or less employees. And then they also have a reoccurring revenue model, so they're already billing people a monthly service fee to go out and do these things. So they were interested in finding a way to pay for these services that we could provide so that we're not just selling hardware to them, we could sell them a continuous data stream. And that was really attractive to us because, as we all know, it's much better to have a reoccurring revenue model than a one-time revenue model, especially with these internet-connected devices. But the problem that we ran into that kind of was overarching among the people we talked to is that they really weren't tech-savvy enough to want these types of solutions. They were interested in an ideal version of what we could produce and not what we could actually put together at the moment. So they would be happy to buy this for $5 per sensor and have it work magically and have infinite battery life and infinite range, but those weren't the things that were possible at the time. And so because of those limitations and those expectations, we discovered that it really wasn't the best market to pursue, and it would really, it wouldn't be a good step for us to invest time and money in building a device for this industry, in that roadmap that we kind of laid out earlier. Instead, what we did was we started talking to a lot of people that are in commercial agriculture. So the farmers that we talked to, they had a lot of the same stories as landscaping companies, but just on a much larger scale. So they have an immediate pain point around growing these crops. They have to produce these things in order to meet the financial projections that they want to do to be successful businesses. And that pain point, they're able to go out there and see it with their own eyes if it's working or not. But a lot of the crops that they want to monitor are located on the other side of the state. I didn't realize when I got into this that a lot of modern farms might cover multiple hundred miles of distribution all over the place. And it's not just the property that you live on that you're farming. There's farms all over, the country or the state that you're managing. And getting in your truck and driving out somewhere that's a 6-hour drive just to go out and check to see if your soil is the right kind of condition is really inconvenient. So they're very interested in buying solutions for this problem again that would do remote monitoring. And they also have a reoccurring revenue model. They pay so many dollars per acre per year for everything from seeds to agronomist services to water to fertilizer. And these things, building in a cost of data every single month or every growing season, again, that's something that would not be totally out of line with the way that they normally purchase things. Whereas with the consumers that we were talking to, they would say, I already bought the device, why did I need to pay for a service that goes along with it? So that was really exciting to us. There are people out there that really want these solutions. And then to cap it all off, we found out that farmers are incredibly tech savvy. Here at Solid, people have talked about Google self-driving cars several times, but farmers have been using autonomous vehicles every single day for years now. They have trucks that are run through GPS coordinate systems that guide themselves next to a combine as they harvest their crops, and it's just incredibly amazing how advanced some of the technology is around farming. But there's no really great a remote sensing technology. So with that information in mind, we decided that we would pivot our focus, and instead of focusing on growing the consumer market or going into landscaping, we would actually start focusing on commercial agriculture. So the next step for our company is that we're going to be building out this product that we're tentatively calling AgLink instead of PlantLink. That's a picture of a prototype that's probably about the same level of fidelity as that basil plant with an Arduino stuck into it that I showed a little bit earlier in the presentation. But we're really excited about the future of this product, and we're actually in Bolt now, the hardware incubator out on the East Coast at Boston, and we're excited about learning from the great lessons that they have for us about building hardware at scale and then even hardware as a service businesses. So kind of in conclusion, to wrap things up, the lessons that we've learned through this whole process were that you can use pre-sales to validate a lot of the assumptions that you're making about your business. Not even just the assumptions about your product, but about the future of your company. And this exposure can confirm or change those assumptions. It can tell you if people really want your product now or if they want your product in the future, or if a different industry wants a different version of your product, even if you're not necessarily talking about those things during the campaign itself. We also learned that Tesla's plan of laying out exactly the steps that you're going to go through to your market, that's not for everyone, and that we shouldn't be afraid of going after these big markets with large potential early on. There's no reason not to pursue these things if people want those solutions and you can provide them. And then finally, we learned that hardware can really enable software as a service. This is another theme that I've seen a lot of times here at Solid this last couple of days, and it's exciting to me to see that we're coming to the same conclusions as a lot of other people out there. So finding an industry where there's a reoccurring pain point that they're already have the familiarity with paying for on a regular basis, and jumping in there as being an additional cost on top of that that really reduces the issues that they're dealing with can be a great way to take a consumer-facing device and turn that into a hardware-as-a-service play. So that wraps up the talk that I have. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, find me on Twitter, or just come talk to me here in front of the stage. Thanks so much for your time.